Hi, this is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and in today's video, I'm going to be doing some writing samples with my currently inked pens. I've only got two currently inked pens this time, but I'm also going to give an update on some of the new stuff I've acquired recently. This is the first inking of my new Custom 98. I guess I wasn't familiar with the Custom 98. I know I've seen it on eBay as I go through. I always go through looking at pilot pens, and I guess I just didn't realize how small of a pen this is. It's about the same size as a Prera or a Stargazer or a Legno or a Stella for that matter. So the Stargazer is a metal pen, so it's got a bit more heft than this Custom 98. It's a plastic pen. It's also the Custom 98 is a round top, but it's got the same kind of cap band. It's a snap cap, that very satisfying snap like you get on the Prera and the Stargazer. This isn't the first Custom 98 I purchased, though. I also got a green one. The green one was the first one that I picked up, and I got a pretty good deal on it. And it came in, and it was like new. The clip has no scratches, just very nice. Now, I got an even better deal on this one, but this one I believe has seen more use. The first thing I noticed was there are lots of micro scratches on the clip, but from a distance, it's not noticeable. And the cap band was kind of crummy and had some ink splatters on it, and there was lots of ink splattered inside the cap, and obviously I had to clean out the nib and feed. But I've got it inked up. Let me see. I reached in my ink shelf and I thought I was pulling out Rouge Granat. So I inked it up with Rouge Caroubier and started writing with it and thought, wow, I don't remember Rouge Granat being this bright red. And then when I went to write the name of the ink, I looked on the bottle and, oh, it's not. And this is the first time I've used this Rouge Caroubier, and it looks like a Pilot G2, which this does not make me want to use this ink. I probably won't be using it in this nib because, like I just said, it looks like a Pilot G2, a red Pilot G2, which is what I used for decades when I was teaching. But then I inked it up with the Rouge Granat, and you can see it is beautiful. So let's take a look at that. It was used, but you can see it still had the sticker on it. After I make this video, I always take the stickers off. It has a nice looking number 3 size, 14 karat medium nib. And this little ring down on the section, there was ink. You can see there's a gap there. Ink can get down in that. So I will likely be inking this with a syringe every time. That's what I did this time. Very wet in all directions. You can see on these really tight 4mm grids, it felt a little tight with this wet medium, so writing with 2 lines was much more comfortable, very pleasant. It's very smooth. Just the slightest little bit of feedback to give you some control. Very nice. Now, I don't have this posted. You can see in my hand, it just barely fits. This is a very nice pen to post, just weighted very nicely. The weight in this cap band just hits right here. Very comfortable. Let me try some reverse writing. No, too dry. In fact, completely dry. So not a good reverse writer. Another pen that I have inked up at the moment, in fact, it's almost out of ink, is my Faber-Castell Ambition in the Flamingo finish. I've been dying to use this pen ever since I got a bottle of Pannonia Cheerio Water Bus. It's a tealish blue ink, or yeah, I guess you could call it an aqua or kind of a lighter turquoise. And those type of inks I really like to use in this flamingo colored pen. And when I did the test of the ink, the Ambition looked great, and it felt pretty nice, but I also tested this ink in my Leonardo Momento Zero with the Jovo Fine, and it was so much nicer than the extra fine. I just had to do the first inking in that Leonardo Momento Zero. But my Leonardo Momento Zero is that jade green pen, and as I was using it, it was very pleasant with this ink. But when I use that pen, I want to use my green ink, Verde Atlantide. So I really wanted to use this ink with this pen, but after seeing how nice this ink was in the fine nib, I knew I wanted something a little bit broader. So I went looking for replacement nibs for the Ambition, and you can get them on Amazon. I ended up getting a broad. I really wanted a medium, but I think the medium was like $10 more than the broad, and I thought, the broad will probably be nice, and it is. So I'm going to do a writing sample with it. The replacement nib came with the entire nib section, so you just take off the old section. I've got the old one in here, and install the new one. Now that Cheerio water bus, you can kind of see it in the nib slit. It never leaks out more than that. It doesn't go full on nib creep, but the entire time I've used it, the nib slit, you can see the blue. This has been a very nice ink. I've used it on some papers that are kind of poor quality, and it does a very good job of not bleeding through. And I just love the shading. It's a very nice, refreshing ink. Let me try some reverse writing. Now, the reverse writing was a little bit scratchy when I first got it, but I just went over some micromesh just a little bit. I didn't want to overdo it. I just did the micromesh until it was pleasant, wrote with it a little bit. I think I noticed it catching on the paper just a little bit, so I did a little bit more micromesh. Now this is very nice. I think the reverse writing is just a hair more broad than my extra fine nib. This might be around uh, the size a fine nib would be. So I've got a nice versatile nib. I've been using this out and about for note taking. The reverse writing is so nice. I can write an entire page reverse writing. The nib doesn't dry out. I like to use the broadside for headings and then do the regular writing in reverse. And it's been very pleasant. I'm very happy with this nib. I think this one was about $40, and I think the medium would have been about 50 or so. I think that's right. But I got them on Amazon, and now I think I'm going to be using this Ambition quite a bit more. Okay, so I mentioned that I got the medium custom 98. Now, These, if you do a search on eBay for the Custom 98, they're pretty expensive. People are asking $250 for them right now. I didn't pay anywhere near that. I think for this one, I paid 110. And this one wasn't an auction, it was just a buy it now. This one, I paid less than $100. I think I paid, counting shipping and everything, it was about $80. Yeah, that's right. This one was 110, this one was 80. So keep your eye on, if you're shopping on eBay, keep your eye on the auctions. Sometimes you can get a really good deal. This one came from Japan, and it was estimated to take, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks to arrive from Japan, and it arrived in just over a week. I was surprised by how quickly it shipped. Now, I did a writing sample with this one on my previous ink test. This one is a fine nib, and I am just in love with these Pilot 14 karat fine nibs. Some are bouncier than others. I've got a Legno that's kind of stiff, but I've got another Legno and this 98 that are nice and bouncy. They feel a lot like my Custom 74, so I am loving this for dark green inks. Green black is my favorite in this one so far. And here's a Custom 94 up next to a Sailor 1911 just for reference. So you can see this is a small pen. This is a 1911 standard, so not a large pen. I also picked up another mini graph, and I featured this one in my last ink test. I got a stub nib, and this is a tiny little stub nib. It's not very sharp at all. It's quite round, kind of like my Nemesine .6 stub. I'm a big fan of that nib, but I write pretty small, so most stub nibs are just a bit too wide for me, like the CM nib on my Pilot Metropolitan. I use that mostly just for playing around with ink, but I'm really liking the stub nib on this little mini graph. Let me show the writing sample that I did. It's just well suited for my small handwriting. But this nib does have very dry upstrokes. So I'm going to have to test and see which inks work best. One of the things I wanted to mention about these mini graphs, I remember when they first came out, I was on the email notification list at Goulet. It seemed like forever. I was just really excited about this pen. And I ended up getting, originally, I got I think this is called Purple Dunes. It's got some translucency to it. The brown or amber sections are translucent. But when I received it, let's see, I can't remember. I think the nib was really scratchy. It was out of a line, and the feed was just all wonky and off to the side. Well, I've worked on it since then, and I've got it in pretty good shape. Let's see. It's an extra fine. And this one, I can't remember what the color of this one's called, but it's very opaque. The first thing I noticed was it uncapped, and it seemed like less rotations than my original. So like 3/4 of a turn, which makes it feel, I mean, I know it's nice to have it uncap quickly, but it feels a little unsecure. Let's see, the original uncaps in almost 1 1/4, and that feels about right. It feels nice. Another thing I noticed on the new one was this little ledge here. This little step is very small, but it was very sharp. I mean, it was a perfect 90-degree angle. I had to use a fingernail file and just go around it and kind of knock that edge down. Now it feels nice, but I'm sure if you looked at it with a loupe, it would look horrible. But it's not noticeable to the naked eye. And I checked my original, and the original is just Oh, it's very smooth. Something, Conklin, it seems like, has issues with quality control. There's always something, it seems like, that slips by, but I guess for the price that I paid for these pens, I think the original one was $40 or so. This one was 30. So, I'm content with that. Now, I don't have these inked up at the moment. I'm gonna do a separate video since I'm needing to test and see what kind of inks will work best in this stub nib. I'll do a separate video where I test some inks. And I wanna give one final update on my Monteverde Pocket Rhythma. Like I said, it had the same issue as the Conklin. The Conklin wanted to skip at the beginning on several of the writing samples, and so did the Pocket Rhythma. It was kind of dry here at the beginning of the scribble, and I stopped to mention that it kind of had a little bit of a hard start. Then it hard started on the M. I stopped to talk about the writing experience, and then it hard started here. And in other writing samples that I did, let me see. I think it was over here. After I made the video, I like to go through on notebooks and use up the rest of the ink, and it did it again. More skipping. So Monteverde Olivine is not perfectly suited. It's not the worst ink that I've used in the Pocket Rhythma. I think Sailor Tokiwa Matsu was the worst. It really dried out in the nib, but it's not the best either. Little hard starts like that tend to aggravate me. So for now, Diamine Earl Grey is my go-to ink for this pen, which is fine because Earl Grey looks good with this gunmetal gray cap and trim. And I don't have any issues with skipping or hard starting, and it looks really nice coming out of that nib. Okay, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.